Hey, my name is Ori, and welcome back to the Darkness Devlog. In the last devlog, I talked about the ideas and concepts that were swirling around in my head, and in this one, I want to discuss enemy AI. Now, this devlog will be a bit more technical, and I'm going to try and break down the process of making enemies and the challenge I faced along the way. So, I'll try to take my time and go slowly and explain just exactly how these enemies work. Now, before we start, I want to thank everyone for voting on the poll. Since I'm an American, I know the importance of voting and democracy as a whole. So that's why I threw all the votes away and just went with the gun. Now, don't get me wrong, I really wanted the sword to work, but I realized I was having a lot of issues trying to program it, and having more experience programming guns, I thought it'd be smarter to just stick to what I actually know. Some of the footage will show a sword in action, but later you'll see the gun in action. So, with that out of the way, let's get into the AI. So, I've never done anything related to AI, but I thought making enemies shouldn't be too hard, right?
Oh my god. This shit makes me want to fucking shoot myself in the head.
So clearly, I was having a fun time. Now, I wanted to make some basic enemies to start because I knew that could help me build off of a, concept. I know I wanted 3 types of basic enemies: an enemy that simply walks back and forth, an enemy that flies, and an enemy that jumps. These all sounded simple in theory, but I quickly realized that there was more to enemies than just the basic traits. Take for example the flying enemy. Of course it needs to fly, but it also needs to detect the player, follow the player, know when it's attacked, and know when it's killed. In theory, all of this sounds easy, but going through this was a bit of a challenge. Instead of starting off with the flying enemy, I decided it'd be smart to create the back and forth enemy and continue from there. This way, I would have a layout to build off of. After some time, I created this enemy that simply moves back and forth and detects these faux walls so the player can still pass through them. This enemy was extremely simple, but I started to get excited about what I can do with this. Next, I wanted to create a bat enemy, so I need to make this cube fly and follow the player. This was actually very simple. I just made another enemy object that followed the player, and to create a realistic flight-like movement, I clamped the speeds and capped the acceleration. I know that was kind of a mouthful, but here's how the final product looked, and I think it works pretty well. I was getting really excited about how this was turning out, so I spent some time creating the art for the bat and attached it to the enemy object. Hello, and welcome to the Intermission segment. Today I'm going to be talking about swords and why they're much harder to program than someone would think. Now picture me with my smooth brain thinking that swords would be easy to program because I just need to create a mask and have it detect the player. But here's where I fell. I didn't realize that adding things like combos, different slashes, buffs, and so on would turn into this hell for programming. One of the comments in the community post actually broke this down very well for me and explained how each weapon type kind of changes how gameplay is featured. So I want to give a shout out to them. It was very helpful and kind of opened my eyes onto how I want to approach this. Bullets are simple because you simply add a value or change how the bullet works, but swords have so much technical aspects to them that I decided I needed to give it more time. I did, however, make this useful knockback chip out of it, so overall, it wasn't a complete waste. Until next time. Now that the bats were coming along, I decided to add an idle state until you get within a certain range of them, and the ability to bounce off their heads, which will be used later to insta-kill them. Since the UI elements have a third color attached to them, I decided to give the enemies some shading to make them pop out of the background more. With the bats nearly done, it was time to work on the next enemy, a jumping slime. Now, before working on the slime, I decided how I wanted the slime to look and how it would interact with the player. This was actually pretty easy since we already have the move back and forth enemy, so now all I need to do is add a code that detects the player and jumps at them, and voila, we have a jumping slime. I also decided to add a kill script for when you step on the bat's head and created a little explosion effect. After finishing the slime in A-Sprite, giving him some shading and changing the game's background to black really started to make things come together. I decided it was time to give our wandering back and forth enemy some character, and I decided to make him a little rat, which I think came out adorable. Now, this is something I ended up adding on impulse, but I realized that many people, well, they suck at roguelikes. So to make this more accessible, I made it so enemies will drop gems that you can use to buy more health in between levels. I also just love how the gems look when they explode out of enemies. It really gives the game a more juicy feeling, and I just love how it looks. With that out of the way, the only thing left was to add the gun and the ammo bar, which is extremely simple. Overall, I'm very happy with how everything turned out so far. I've been working on how levels are going to play out, and that process is a whole nother can of worms, but I've been slowly chipping away at it. I want to give a huge thank you to Sam Spade Game Dev for kind of breaking down the enemies. It's an amazing channel that goes over a lot of aspects of Game Maker and really breaks it down in a technical way. The videos are super amazing, so please, if you're interested in enemy AI or anything related to Game Maker, please check them out. And thank you for watching. I only made a couple enemies in this video, and I've already been thinking about adding some more enemies, like the one mentioned in this comic. The hand really reminded me of the enemies in A Link to the Past, so I wanted to try and include it. If you want to suggest any enemies for the game, or have any feedback in general, please leave a comment below. And if you want to join a community of people who share ideas like yours, you can find my Discord and Twitter down below. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.